something that the $35 billion eye care industry is desperate to keep you from knowing, so much so that they've already offered me more than $500,000 to keep it to myself. Based on the highly suppressed discoveries of a world-famous Ivy League-educated ophthalmologist, this secret to vision restoration has already helped over 14,450 people to improve their eyesight to near 20/20 vision in less than 21 days, even if their prescription was a staggering minus 6.25 or worse. And this method works for both nearsightedness and farsightedness, because as you will soon discover, both conditions have a similar root cause, and this method eliminates the fundamental cause of poor vision. And they've done it without wasting months of their lives trying popular but ineffective and sometimes dangerous, I'll show you why later, eye training methods, without having to wear unattractive, highly breakable glasses or uncomfortable, even painful contact lenses, and without undergoing any risky or expensive eye surgeries. In fact, what I'm going to tell you about today requires absolutely zero investment in any vision-enhancing products, can safely and easily be mastered by people of all ages, from young children to the elderly, and takes less than 15 minutes a day over a span of about 3 weeks to get your eyesight back to near perfect vision. Now, I know that sounds incredible, perhaps even too good to be true, which is why in the following brief presentation, I'm going to break down all of the science behind this breakthrough method in explicit but easy to understand detail. And after that, I'll share with you how to use this proven method immediately so that you can begin breaking free of the dependency on your fragile, easily shattered glasses or uncomfortable contact lenses, while enjoying dramatically better vision than you have in years or decades, or even your entire life. And just like the more than 14,500 Americans who have already experienced the results of this powerful vision restoration method for themselves, people like Richie Townsend of Little Rock, Arkansas, who says, "When I was first introduced to your vision restoration method, I was insanely skeptical. It seemed like if there was a way to dramatically improve your eyesight without having to depend on glasses or contact lenses, I would have already known about it. Since you guaranteed it would work, however, I decided there was no harm in giving it a try, and wow, am I glad I did. It's only been 17 days, and already I'm seeing more clearly and with more sharp focus than ever before in my life. Thank you." And Sammy Longwood of Odessa, Texas, who writes, "I first found out about this eye training method from your father nearly 14 years ago. But before that, I was one prescription change away from being legally blind. In just a month's time, however, my glasses prescription went from a -7 to a -2.25. Less than 2 months after that, I was tested with 20/20 vision. And in the 13 years since then, my vision hasn't regressed one bit. I'm so glad you're carrying on the legacy of your father, Benjamin. We need to get this to as many people as humanly possible." And Rachel Laus of Tempe, Arizona, who writes, "I've always known the eye industry was a scam, but it didn't seem like there were any other options. Sure, I tried alternatives like the Bates method, but for all the hype, I wasn't getting any results. Then I came across your presentation, and everything changed. I simply can't get over the shock of how quickly I've been able to regain my eyesight. I guess in my case, seeing really is believing." The first thing you're probably wondering is who I am and why you should be listening to anything I have to say. As I already mentioned, my name is Dr. Benjamin Miller. I'm a neurologist by training, and I've spent a good part of my professional life conducting clinical research and trials. When it comes to my choice of careers, I guess you could say I followed in the footsteps of my father, a well-respected ophthalmologist who operated his own independent practice for 47 years. Now, there are 2 things you should know about my dad, and they're both extremely relevant to the eye-strengthening breakthrough I'll be telling you about today. The first is that my father was a good man who got more satisfaction from helping people than he did from making money. The second is that he was someone who believed medicine was a constantly evolving field, which meant he was constantly looking for new, better solutions to his patients' health problems. I'm sharing these details with you because they'll give you the background you need to understand my father's discovery, something that has the power to fundamentally transform the way people all across our country address their vision problems, and that the $35 billion per year eye care industry is fighting tooth and nail to squash before it gets out into the public. You see, in the early 1980s, my father began noticing something very troubling. The eyesight of virtually every single one of his patients was getting worse. It was extremely confusing, and it caused my father a lot of sleepless nights. After all, he was just following the established medical protocols, giving his patients biannual eye exams, then prescribing glasses that would compensate for their vision impairment. So, why did they need increasingly strong prescription lenses year after year? Was he doing something wrong, something that was hurting the very people he had taken an oath to help? The idea terrified my father, and he had to know. So, he began making the hour-and-a-half drive over to the University of Texas's medical library every single night after work. And he spent countless hours poring through the most recent findings in the field of ophthalmology and researching everything he possibly could about the causes of eyesight degeneration. Until late one fateful night in June of 1982, he found himself reading the writings of a man named Dr. William Bates. Now, you may have heard of Dr. William Bates already. He pioneered something called the Bates Method, an influential theory that claimed a person could significantly improve their vision and reduce their myopia through regular eye exercises. And while my father quickly realized that the Bates Method is significantly outdated, and you'll see why in a minute, and can even be dangerous for your eyesight, he also realized that some of the principles behind it were still valid, and could help to explain why his patients were slowly but steadily losing their vision. We'll get to those principles in just a second, but first, let me give you a quick background on Dr. William Bates in case you're unfamiliar with him. With an undergraduate degree from Cornell University and a medical degree from Columbia University's College of Physicians and Surgeons, Dr. Bates was widely considered to be one of the most brilliant eye doctors of the early 20th century. And his famous Bates Method is based on three simple ideas. The first is that your eyeballs are surrounded by muscles which control their ability to see. The second is that when these muscles are constantly tense, they put a terrible strain on your eyeballs, thus keeping them out of focus. And the third is that through relaxation techniques, you can reduce the strain on your eyesight and thus free your eyeballs to improve their focus, resulting in major improvements in your vision. Now, as I already mentioned, the Bates Method has some serious flaws. For one thing, Dr. Bates based a large portion of his eye exercises around the belief that our eyeballs change shape when focusing on different objects. Unfortunately, with modern technology, it has now been medically proven that this simply does not happen, which makes several of his most popular exercises not only ineffective, but potentially even dangerous. Also, the Bates Method assumes one can increase the thickness of the sclera, the white substance on your eyeball, to achieve better eyesight, which modern science has shown to be impossible. Finally, Dr. Bates only developed exercises for those suffering from nearsightedness, but not those suffering from farsightedness or astigmatism. But despite all those shortcomings, my father also noticed that something extremely vital, which is that Dr. Bates had gotten a few important things right. And as my father began to spend more and more hours researching the most up-to-date science and physiology behind how the human eyeball works, he began to formulate his own theory, something that could not only explain why his patients were slowly but steadily losing their vision, but that could also hold the key to reversing the effects of degenerating eyesight, so that virtually any human being on the planet could quickly, easily, and effortlessly restore their vision to near 20/20. You see, just as Dr. Bates had suggested, the human eyeball is indeed surrounded by muscle, or to be even more specific, striated muscle tissue. That's the same type of muscle tissue that's found in other parts of your body, like your biceps, your triceps, and even your leg muscles. But while Dr. Bates incorrectly thought that strained muscle tissue caused the eyeball to change shape, thus making it impossible to focus, my father realized that it's really the strength of the eye's muscle tissue that was behind whether someone's vision was strong or weak. In other words, just like your arm muscles become stronger if you lift weights regularly, your eye muscles can be strengthened through regular exercises. This should make a lot of sense to you because remember, it's the exact same muscle tissue in both cases. And because the above is medically proven to be true, my father also realized that the opposite was true as well. If your eye muscles are never exercised, they continue to get smaller and weaker over time. This was a huge discovery for my dad because it perfectly explained why his patients were steadily experiencing a decline in their eyesight. The problem with glasses and today's contact lenses is that they're essentially doing all the heavy lifting for you, which means even if your eyesight is just mildly below average to begin with, the longer you wear your corrective lenses, the longer you go without exercising your eye muscles, and the worse your eyesight will get. In other words, just as someone who doesn't lift weights gets steadily weaker as they age, someone who never needs to use their eye muscles will get steadily worse eyesight over the years too. So, Dad's research made it pretty clear why Dad's patients needed stronger prescriptions year after year. But even more importantly, His research also suggested that there was an antidote to the problems of poor or deteriorating eyesight, and that perhaps using nothing but some natural training techniques and methods that were based on the Bates method and then significantly improved upon, Dad could help his patients to reverse their bad vision so that they would never need to purchase another pair of glasses or contact lenses or experience that gnawing anxiety that comes from knowing that if they misplaced or broke their glasses while traveling, it could be hours, days, or even weeks before they'd be able to see again, or need to worry about not being able to drive at night because their vision was too weak. Again. Which is why for the next 5 years he worked like a man possessed. He continued his daily trips to the Medical Research Library at UT, and he also expanded his search to encompass the latest findings in human physiology, biology, and neurology. Some of my earliest childhood memories are going on weekend trips with my father, where we'd drive across several state lines just so he could meet with some world-famous eye researchers I'd never heard of. And through the entire time, he took painstaking care to record every single one of his findings, until finally, in the late spring of 1988, he had an eye-strengthening exercise routine that he was convinced could succeed where Dr. Bates had failed. But before my father could start sharing his program with his patients, he had to know that it really, truly worked, and he had to be dead certain that it was 100% safe. So he began testing it on himself. You see, by 1988, my father's glasses prescription was a terribly strong -6.25. And if the vision restoration method that he'd spent 5 years formulating could work for him, then he knew it could do wonders for others whose eyesight wasn't nearly so bad. So, for the next 3 weeks, my father committed himself to his ocular training workout routine. The exercises themselves were actually surprisingly simple, just little things like teaching the eye muscles to autofocus while reading, performing restorative stretching exercises that relax ocular muscles, executing carefully coordinated eye movements that work to strengthen the eyeball. And yet, by the end of the 3rd week, my father was noticing a dramatic difference in his vision. Suddenly, and for the first time in his life, my father was able to read the words on distant signs and billboards, and to see the smiles on his children's faces from across the yard as they played, without the use of glasses. Honestly, it was a little scary for him at first. After so many decades of being completely dependent upon corrective lenses, of always having to worry about whether he'd remember to pack his backup pair of glasses when he traveled to visit relatives, of even not being able to accurately see more than 10 feet in front of him when he went swimming. It felt really strange to go an entire day without needing to put on his glasses even once. As the days continued to go by, however, and as my father continued to do his simple exercises and to enjoy better and better vision as a result of them, that feeling of uneasiness was replaced by something much more powerful, the sensation of total, overwhelming freedom. And with the personal, first-hand proof that the eye-strengthening exercises he'd invented really worked, and could quickly and naturally restore the vision of even someone who was pushing the limits of blindness, my father made it his mission to start sharing his ocular training program with every single patient that walked through his door. By 1993, Dad had helped more than 3,000 patients to completely break free of their dependence upon glasses and corrective lenses. As word spread about what he was doing, people began to come to my father's practice from all over Texas, and even from neighboring states like Oklahoma, Louisiana, and New Mexico, until, by the time my father retired in 2002, more than 14,000 Americans had used his natural eyesight restoration method to achieve nearly 20/20 vision, while ditching their expensive prescription glasses and contact lenses and saving hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars in the process. In late 2007, as Dad's health began to falter, I sat down with him and together we began recording his eye-strengthening exercises and vision restoration secrets in explicit detail so that they would be preserved for future generations. When he passed away on October 16, 2009, it was clear that I had a duty to carry on my father's mission to share the eye-strengthening method he's pioneered with as many people as I possibly could. People of all ages who suffer from myopia, farsightedness, astigmatism, and other vision problems that dramatically impacted their quality of life. So I took all of the training exercises along with his specific guidelines for using them and put them into a clearly organized training program, something that anyone would be able to follow along, even if they didn't know the first thing about how the human eye works or had never even passed a 5th grade science class. And I sent it to the vice president of one of the largest eye care companies in the United States. I nicknamed this program